Food banks have become essential within modern-day society, tackling problems of poverty, food insecurity, and hunger. But it hasn't always been this way. So how have food banks emerged within society? Should it be the responsibility of charities to provide food, a basic human right? If so, what might the future of food provision look like? Will the UK ever be hunger-free? The Trussell Trust is the predominant and largest food bank organisation within the UK, with a network of over 1,200 centres. Whilst this accounts for around 66% of food aid, independent food banks have also been set up across the UK. So what do these food banks actually do? Focusing on the Trussell Trust, the charity was designed to provide 3-day temporary emergency food parcels to those who have been referred in a crisis. In the latest 2019 to 2020 statistics, the organisation distributed a record-breaking 1.9 million food parcels to people in crisis, and since the economic impacts of COVID-19, this number has rapidly increased in 2020. But why have more people needed to access food banks in recent years? To understand the emergence of hunger within the UK, we need to look at the ideas of neoliberalism and austerity. Neoliberalism, in simple terms, is a political mindset that was introduced in the 1980s by Margaret Thatcher and promotes the idea of privatisation and deregulation. This deregulation limits government power and involvement, increasing economic competition. Resulting from this came the financial crisis of 2008, which pushed millions into economic insecurity. This is when austerity comes in. Attempting to combat this national economic crisis, austerity is essentially a time of public spending cuts and tax increases, aiming to reduce government debt. Reducing public spending particularly affects the welfare support system, with the largest welfare reform being the introduction of universal credit, combining 6 benefit payments into one. Whilst the goal of universal credit was to reduce poverty and economic insecurity, it has been more problematic than successful, and in 2019 to 2020 was one of the key triggers of Trussell Trust food bank use. The 5-week wait to receive universal credit has triggered destitution, pushing people into food insecurity whilst they have to wait for payments. Additionally, the combination of 6 benefits into one means that the universal credit scheme does not cover the cost of living, generating hunger. The final trigger of food bank use was low income, as the minimum wage is simply not enough to ensure economic and food security. This is when charities have had to step in, picking up the pieces of a fragmented, inadequate welfare system, supporting those across the UK living in destitution. Not only have food banks taken on the role of food provision, but they have also gone beyond to provide additional services, tackling these root causes of hunger and destitution. Many food banks now provide benefits guidance, mental health support, and healthy eating advice, subsidising the welfare support that should be provided by the government. Other food banks have focused on normalising food aid, creating a welcoming environment for users through cafe-style centres and food vans. These food banks aim to tackle the negative stigmas that are often attached to food banks, challenging ideologies that those experiencing hunger are there at fault of their own. Whilst it's great that these charities can step in and help those in need, no one should be forced to turn to charity, ashamed because they can't afford food, a basic human right. So, should we really be relying on the kindliness of charities who feel obliged to help those struggling? This is a difficult question, but one that needs to be addressed if we want to achieve a hunger-free future. In this day and age, it is assumed that food banks will step in, filling the gaps of state welfare reforms. However, when we look back at the core purpose of the Trussell Trust, it is intended as a temporary emergency service only. Food banks have become an assumed solution to an issue they cannot solve. The dynamic possibilities of food banks are evident, and they will continue to excel in the future. But this isn't enough. Food must be identified by the government as a basic human right, establishing their responsibility to provide. If this is not done, the rumbling of a hungry stomach will become the soundtrack of the UK's future.